Ooh, welcome everyone to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host, Scotty McCoy, and boy, do I have a surprise for all of you. And this time I have triple the surprise because I don't have one guest, I don't have two guests, but I got three guests. I have the admins of Autism Virtually right now on Zoom with me, Jennifer, Lisa, and Lindsay. And I'm so excited to also say I'm also an admin of Autism Virtually, which is really
Yep.
exciting. And we are going to be talking about what this amazing group is and what it does, and spread awareness also for autism and people that live with autism, and kind of give you an update on that. But before we get into all of that, how are you all doing? How you doing, Jen, Lisa, Lindsay? How you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. I got to spend the day with a bunch of golden retrievers. I went to a golden retriever rescue camp. So that was awesome. So I
Nice.
had a great day. How
Awesome.
about you ladies? How about Lisa? You have a good day?
Oh, all great. Hanging out with my new pup, Colbert.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
How you doing, Lindsay?
I didn't hang out with any dogs today. I mean, my dog is just kind of hanging out by himself. I had my niece's first birthday party today, so
Nice.
we had an eventful day.
Nice. Yeah, I was on set filming the remainder of 72. I wasn't in any of the scenes today, but I was on set probably since 8 o'clock this morning and got done at 5:30 ish. And you might see a little bit of blood on me here and there, fake blood, because we wrapped the movie. And because you get when you when a sports player is done, they get Gatorade dumped on them. When you film a horror movie, the initiation is the main person in charge, usually the director. I'm not the director, but I am the founder of the company, so I was the one that got the blood all over me, and the remainder of the blood squirted all over me and on my Apple Watch. I had to take that off. Yeah, it was a mess. I wasn't expecting it, but it was fun. It was a fun little treat. So yeah, we got it on video, so that'll be posted soon. But just to get things started, I'll let Jen kind of answer this one. What is Autism Virtually? Where'd the name come from? And what is this group's purpose?
All right. So Autism Virtually is a platform that we have on Facebook right now because it's easy to access. It's a resource education and support platform for all things autism. I named it that because I love the movie Love Actually. Did anybody see it here?
Love
It's
it.
so messy. It's such a messy movie, and it shows that love is like so messy, and it's pain and it's happiness and it's fear, and it's just like everywhere, right? And autism is a lot like that too. Most information about autism is online as well. Fun fact. So I figured Autism Virtually would be a great name for the platform.
Awesome.
And the last question is, what is the goal? What do we do?
Like,
Yes.
what is the purpose of this group?
The purpose of this group is to be able to hopefully reach everybody. But I have like main groups of people. Like, for example, I'm a parent of a son with autism. He's 21 years old now. And so he's going to graduate. So I figured I needed something new to put my time in since he won't need me. But he's going to be 21. And I changed my job when he was, I'm going to say 8 or 9, so that I could become a therapeutic support staff. That's what we were called before. So I could get lots of trainings in autism and work with autistic kids because I found my son was autistic. And I have access to great behavioral consultants, therapists, OT, SP, PTs. And when I'm online, I notice most parents don't have access to those people. And to get services nowadays is really hard because there's not a lot of people in these fields left. And there's like this huge need. So my basic idea to get this platform started was to kind of give parents a back door. So if they're having a hard time getting a behavioral consultant signed on, there's a big wait list, or speech therapy, but they could post a question in here and a speech therapist could answer them, or a BC could answer them. We also give trainings, right? So we gave two. The first one was Autism for Everyone, which, like I said, is for the majority of people, right? People who don't have a child with autism, people who may not even really know a person with autism really well. The second one we gave was really a bit harder. This was called Anxiety, Depression, Suicide through the lens of autism, because these are issues that autistic people have to deal with. And so we're doing education, right? And we're also hopeful to have some social events for people with autism, kids with autism, teen with autism, all on a virtual platform, kind of like bringing people together in the real world on the computer.
And that's the biggest way to bring in a vast majority of people, because there's only so many people that live in our area or whatever. But then you have the online world where you can get people from not just not just from Pennsylvania, not just from Maryland. You can get people from all 50 states in the United States. You can get people from out of the country. You can get people all around the globe through the online world of social networking. So that is the best way to bring people together. So Lisa, how did you get involved with Autism Virtually? And then I'll ask you the same question, Lindsay.
Jennifer's a friend of mine. I am close with her son, Leaf.
He's a great kid.
Jennifer knows that I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 28 years, and she invited me, and I was very excited to be a part of it and be able to connect with other professionals and just help, awareness. I have several friends. I'm neurodiverse. I have friends, so many friends who also are neurodiverse, and I mean, I'm just drawn to the person who thinks differently, who experiences life maybe a little differently, and still has this fantastic time doing so.
Yeah.
So I'm just happy to be a part of it. And Jennifer and Lee for my links.
Nice. So what about you, Lindsay? How'd you get involved with Autism Virtually?
Well, I started working with Jen. I guess we're at 11 years now. We took a training together and we started talking there. And then worked a few cases together, worked at the same schools. So we got to know each other a little better and became friends. I have a son who has autism and ADHD. So we kind of bonded over that as well, and just being parents in general and talking about our children and the struggles that we faced with them growing up. So when she asked me to be a part of this, I really thought it was a great idea. And I was happy to help in any way I could.
Right. Absolutely. So Lindsay, for someone that is dealing with a child that has autism, like for example, as you mentioned, you have a child that has autism. So what should a parent do? Yes. What like advice do you have for someone that just find like that the child has autism, like, and they are kind of dealing with this? Like, what advice would you give to that parent?
First of all, be open-minded. I think a lot of people they hear their child has autism and they think like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like that they're different. Like who am I supposed to talk to? Because, a lot of times they get the diagnosis and they're like, okay, now what? And they're not given a lot of resources. And they just kind of send you home, be on your way. There you go, figure it out. So definitely be open to looking for other resources, reaching out to other parents, trying to find that connection in your community, to have professionals give you advice, other parents who have been there, educators, and just be patient. Know that your child is still looking to you as their main role model, and you are the most important person in their life, and you are there to teach them what they need and to give them the skills that they need to navigate the world. So just being patient with that.
Absolutely. What about you, Lisa? What advice would you give them from an educator standpoint, even?
I would suggest to be a strong advocate for your child. Make sure, I guess, know that there are available schools that may be different than public education. Like there are a lot of great alternative schools, but not even in public education. And I don't mean like charter schools. I mean like public schools that just have an alternative setting. And even larger public schools, there are great school counselors and special education teachers who, if you stay in good contact, will support you and your child and make sure that, you know, the accommodations
Mhm.
are met. That's a legal document. They need to be met. And if there's anything that's not being met, speak up
Mhm.
and insist. I know it's a lot of energy and work, but yeah, it's your child. So you know, people are going to do it anyway, but like, don't give up and make sure that Bearhead says hi. Make sure that they're getting every accommodation, and the teachers who get them and love them just exactly who they
Yeah.
are, that you can make sure that you get those connections.
Absolutely. What about you, Jen? What advice would you give from a parental standpoint?
I know when I got diagnosis, first thing I dealt with was guilt. I felt very guilty. Like, was it something I did when I was pregnant? He's 6. How did I miss it this long? You know, and it's okay. I tell parents it's okay to go through. It's kind of like a grief process, because you know that their life is going to be different. So, like, what you envision for them has to change. And the
Mhm.
second thing I tell parents is, along with, you know, be gentle with yourself, and it's okay to go through those feelings, is to educate yourself. We fear
Yeah.
what we do not know.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly important that you go out and you can Google things. Like I told you, most information on autism is actually online. So
Yeah.
that's where you're going to find all the information, figure out what services might help
Mhm.
your child, and just be really proactive.
Yeah.
And the more you know, the less you fear, and the farther you go.
Yeah, exactly. I know that with like when Leaf was diagnosed, for example, you didn't have at your fingertips what everybody does now, and that is the internet. Really, like the internet, if it was a thing, wasn't as vast and big as it is now.
True.
Yep. So everybody has that you know, that Google. And one thing you have to also realize is just because it's on Google doesn't mean it's correct. So
That's very
always, if you
true.
have any questions, always ask your your medical, or you know, your physician or somebody that is trained in that situation, because especially if you don't know what's going on, because, or if you have any questions, because Google can give you so much, but just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Unfortunately, that's the case. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But you can be careful about your sources too. Like, for
Mhm.
example, if you see an article on psychology.com or whatever, you can
Yeah.
see, okay, this is a very respected source. They definitely
Yeah.
make sure that what they're writing is accurate, you
Yeah.
know, versus, you know, the Inquirer maybe giving,
Right.
or the Onion giving you
Right.
information. So you can
The
sift through,
Onion.
but you
Yeah.
definitely need to take everything with a grain of salt, and you just keep
Yep.
on reading, talk to
Yep.
professionals, and yeah, be proactive.
Right. And one major, like, for example, like you mentioned, like Wikipedia is a big site that everybody goes to for their sources. But if you didn't know this, Wikipedia can be edited by myself, by you, everybody in this group. Everybody that has access to a computer and the internet can edit and update a wiki without what, you know, and change it to whatever. I can literally say, you know, that I don't know, that you know, the sky is blue because, you know, it's that's the way, you know, I don't know, just you can make anything up, really. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true. And Wikipedia is one of those main reasons. And that's why when you are an educator or a student, even, you can't cite Wikipedia, because it isn't a factual site. I could put anything on there. I can put that, you know, that bugs are poisonous, and some of them are, but not all of them are. You know, I could do what, you know, you can do that. So
Yeah.
definitely make sure your sources are legit.
Totally off topic, but
Okay.
I'm gonna throw this out for my son. Have you heard of Rational Wiki? It's called
I have.
rationalwiki.org.
I have.
Yeah, it's like Wikipedia for smart people.
Oh,
So my son like is one of the editors of it. So
nice.
he
Nice.
changes stuff. But yeah, so check it out. You know, if you're ever bored,
Yeah.
you can check out Rational Wiki.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like Wikipedia is one of the, like, it has a ton of information, but doesn't mean it's always accurate. So like you said, take it with a grain of salt. Like WebMD might be more accurate, obviously more accurate than Wikipedia. Like just things like that you want to, but always, if you have any questions or concerns, seek out a therapist or a medical professional, somebody that has the background that can give you the information that you can need, and it most likely will be more, obviously more accurate than what you would find online. but
Mhm.
online is a good starting point as well. So, and that's another thing. With autism, like, you can't just like self-diagnose your child. Oh, he has these symptoms, like, like he has autism. Like, you obviously, there's a set of tests that that would be run, or there would be ways that a doctor would determine that they are autistic. So I'll start with Jen on this one. So what are some key signs of early autism, and what should a parent do if these children are doing signs? Like, because you can't just self-diagnose your child as autism with these signs, but what are they, and how can, and what would, I guess, be the cause for them to take their child to get evaluated by a medical professional?
Well, it's interesting because in boys and girls, it could look differently. We're still learning more about what autism looks like in girls. So the list of behaviors to watch for, you may see in girls, you definitely see in boys. Early signs of autism include sensory reactions or meltdowns, like perhaps say, get really upset. My son, for example, when he just got out of nowhere, like the wind blew and he would have a meltdown. It took me a while to figure out that it was the feeling of the wind. So sensory reactions, meltdowns, repetitive behaviors, repetitive food, repetitive playing, difficulty dealing with change, even if it's like most children find is a good change. They struggle with peers. They're more interested in parallel play versus, playing with their peers. And they usually play with toys in a different way. So
Right.
if your child has autism, these are some markers you can look for. As you said, you need a doctor to be able to test the child, a psychologist actually. Your family doctor can't say, hey, I think Johnny has autism. And then you go to school and say, my doctor said Johnny has autism. Because your doctor didn't go to school for 8 years learning about the brain. So they're not able to actually give a diagnosis. So you have to go to a specialist for that. But it is very important to seek out the right people because any child's brain changes the most when they are a toddler. So early intervention is key with children with autism, as it is with any child.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, if a child has autism in an educational standpoint, like if they do have autism and a parent comes to you, how do you as an educator, I guess, change your teaching habits so you can, like, help a child, and it could be a highly functional autistic child that might not be needing special education type classes. How would you as an educator go from teaching a room full of students, a lot of them don't have autism, but there might be a select few that has that or another type of learning or regular type of disability?
Yeah, I do have several students who over the years have autism, and they seem to do well in the classroom because I think, for one, no matter what, the lights are low always in my classroom. I never have overhead lights on. I have lamps around the room because it's a warmer, easier light to tolerate for people with autism or people with migraines or whatever it is. They are able to, I think, having that conversation with what works best for that particular child, and what if they need times where they're going to need to break from the room and they need to walk around and they need to go out and do whatever. If they need to go get a drink or just walk a lap around the thing, they have permission to do that. They don't have to make a scene about it. They don't have to feel like they're being exposed. So giving them those accommodations, I think, always going for the strength of that person and how they can contribute, and and I think just in general, the classroom atmosphere of how we treat each other has to be set from the very beginning, those expectations and just that culture of inclusiveness no matter what, and everyone has a voice to share, and we should have a safe space to be able to be who you are. And so it's kind of a general understanding already, but anything the child needs that will help them cope with the sensory overload that can happen. They will always have choice if they're going to work with someone or alone. They're not going to be forced in a group. They're not going to be forced to be alone if it's something that they've chosen not to. Like anything basically you can do to help with the things that cause that overload, like Jennifer was saying, the meltdowns.
Yeah.
If you can help with that, and they don't have to get to that point, then their brain's ready to go. They don't have to deal with all that excess, and they're, excited to be a part of things. I think the flexibility helps them. I think also being very specific about certain things is helpful for certain. And I'm like not a person who's always, I'm very flexible and very laid back. So I have to remember to be explicit about certain things that will help things be less confusing if there's a potential for it. Yeah, just lots of things that can be done. But I think that one-on-one with the family, or with if the student is comfortable, but definitely with parent, of like what works for your son, your daughter, not just a general like, oh, if someone has
Right.
autism, then this is what you have to do, because that's not how it is.
Right.
There's
Every
completely different
person might
needs.
be different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Because little Johnny has autism and he might need, this type of care. Little Susie might need a totally different type of
Totally different
care.
things. Yeah.
So it really depends on the child and what their needs and what they specifically trigger to, because there are things like Jennifer mentioned, sensory meltdowns. Like they might just get a meltdown because maybe the air conditioning's on and it's blowing on them or something, and they're right under the air vent, like things like that. Like you have to take those into consideration also, and there's a lot that is involved. And as an educator, are you like trained for this, or how does that work?
I think that educators have opportunities to be trained in certain
Mhm,
classes. We have our credits we always get every year.
mhm.
And I mean, it probably depends on the awareness your district has for bringing in certain trainings. Most of the teachers I work with, and I can speak for myself,
Mhm.
I seek out my own learning often about
Yeah,
things that matter the most to me. This happens to be one.
yeah.
So, but I think that, there are things out there.
Mhm.
Again, there's a lot of opportunities. I'm just not sure always people take those opportunities. So
Yeah.
it's really the teacher has to have a drive to seek things out too.
Yeah,
Way above
absolutely.
beyond those classes, because those should be, I think a lot of classes we have are just touching the surface,
Right.
just comprehensive in a sense of an overview. But then
Yeah.
if you get like a spark from them, and then you go figure this out, you go find
Mhm.
better resources. All the time
Yeah.
you're looking for new resources. And that's why this thing that Jennifer's doing is amazing, to connect professionals and parents.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that and I might be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably where they have special education type classes for people that are actually trained to handle, situations where they have severe autism or like severe other disabilities, whether it's behavioral or, neurological or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, there's people that actually go to school for special education, so that they can actually give them the proper treatment and have the training to do that proper treatment as well.
And help inform other educators,
Yeah,
and also like keep them accountable to the accommodations.
yeah,
Make sure that those things are being met, and that great, all of the accommodations are being met.
yeah,
And special
absolutely.
education's keeping tabs on each student. They should be. And really they should be keeping tabs on each teacher too, because teachers do get busy and overwhelmed, and like again, they may be ignorant to certain things. So as long as the special education teacher is keeping up on making sure that the needs are being met, and the agreement, the IEP or the 504,
Yeah,
whatever you end up with, is being met, that helps. That accountability helps a busy
yeah,
teacher.
absolutely. I was gonna ask Lindsay this next question. Is she still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. So the question I got for you is, how does a child with autism, from a professional standpoint, how do they get the necessary care and treatment so they can like cope with living with autism, like so they can get from anything from the proper diagnosis to getting the proper medication or the proper way, to kind of live in normal society with autism, because it's obviously not, it's going to be a life-changing thing for both the child and the parent, and they have to live with this the rest of their life. So how does a child get that care and treatment to live with this?
Right. Well, I think Jen had mentioned this before, maybe not during this interview, but
Mm-hmm.
1% of the population right now has autism.
Mm-hmm.
I find the 99% of people that do not are more of the problem. The understanding, that is what's
Mm-hmm.
not there. So that is why this platform is so important, to help that 99%
Mm-hmm.
understand that this is something that they are living with every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we could be a little more open to helping them get through
Mm-hmm.
the day. I'm sure they want to go to school and sit there and learn with their peers and then go out and have recess and have a
Mm-hmm.
good time. But all of those distractions are all in the way, like the air conditioning, the lights,
Mm-hmm.
all of the noises. Um, so just being that support as a parent, an educator, a professional, um, talking to them, see what they need. They're not going to come up to you and tell you all of the time, hey, these people are too loud, this is hurting my ears. They're going to say it in a different way. Their behavior is going to be their communication. So being there for them, offering them that support, recognizing when things happen, certain times of the day may just be a trigger for them.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the cafeteria. You may notice that they might be hesitant. They don't want to go there. So what is causing that? Is it the noise? Is it the smell? Things like that. So just reaching out to different people,
Mm-hmm.
talking to the whole team, that includes the child as well, uh, getting input from all aspects of their life so they could have the most success. Include the parents, include the educators, include therapists. Um, make sure that you're all on the same page
Yeah.
for that child, because you may have worked with another child and you may have seen similar instances where they didn't like recess or they didn't like crowds, but you could have worked with another child who did and they thrived in that environment. So just not focusing on what worked one day or with one child, making
Yeah.
sure that it is individualized to that child.
Absolutely. So Jen, if a child is being bullied because of their autism, what advice would you give? Like, first of all, what should the child do if they are in an instance of being bullied? And what should parents do to help their child while they're experiencing this pain? And what are like the protocols? And are there any warning signs that if the child doesn't want to tell them because they're afraid to? What, like, how can the parent kind of find out or kind of get to the truth without having to bombard the child with all these questions that might make them feel scared or uncomfortable?
Okay. This is actually a really good question. And I'm gonna ask Lindsay to answer this too, because she has a son with
Yeah.
autism. Our children are different in a lot of ways. So
Yep.
I'll answer this question as a parent with my son, who suffered bullying a lot and still sometimes does. And he's always been really kind to people. He doesn't really try to make waves. He's learned to try to be invisible, you know. But number one, he's not going to tell me that he's bullied. He has autism. He has a communication disorder. When he's uncomfortable, he loses the ability to talk. When he's been bullied at school and he comes home, he only wants to talk about home. He only wants to think about home. He's very like environment driven. So like, I don't know that he's being bullied. I might be able to tell that he had a bad day if he comes home at the end of the day and he hugs his dog for 20 minutes. I know he had a bad day. But communication is really a problem when you have a child with autism, because they're not going to come home and they're not going to tell you that they've been bullied. And also, like, answering questions can be really tough. Like, for example, when my son was in second grade, he came home with this terrible cut on his eye, and it looked like it was so close to his eye. And I said, buddy, what happened? And he said, a kid on a swing picked my eye, right? And that's the last thing that happened. I said, well, you know, buddy, you know better than to stand so close. He's like, I wasn't standing close. And that was all the information I got. I'm like, well, then how did you get close? He said, another kid pushed me in front of the swing. And he didn't tell the teacher that's what happened because she didn't ask the right question. So sometimes it is about asking that right question. And sometimes it's just impossible to know. I only knew because of the mark on his eye. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known. And as a parent, what do? It's heartbreaking and it's hard because they don't talk to you. When you have a child with autism, you don't, at least I don't get communication. The only communication I get is from teachers when things are going wrong. So, and I know he's an awesome human, but like, you know, like every teacher meeting but one started out as, well, we know Leaf is really smart and great in these things. So let's talk about what he struggles in. I'm like, no, let's not. Let's talk about what he's great at, you know, like, but we never do that. So it's really a tricky thing when you have a child with autism and bullying. And like I said, I'm interested for Lindsay to answer that question. I know possibly her son may express, but my son never did. So for me, it was really hard. You just had to kind of guess what kind of day he had by how he was when he came home and assume that people and children can be really hard, you know?
Right. I had educators straight up in my IEP meeting saying that because I have a learning disability, I have ADHD, I have Tourette's. So like, you know, you see me rolling my eyes, I'm not rolling them at the guests, that's my Tourette's. But I at my IEP meeting, I had teachers say straight out that Scotty as the, you know, these disabilities or whatever. This was younger when I was younger, not like you know, high school level, like 10th, 11th, 12th grade. But when I was younger, they're like, when he grows to be an adult, he's not going to amount to anything. He's going to work in fast food. He won't go to college. He won't get a job. He won't do this, that, and the other. Well, I love that because I steal from Taylor Swift. My haters are my motivators. When I heard them say that, it devastated me, thinking that these people are my educators and they're telling me I'm not going to amount to anything. I'm going to be a McDonald's, you know, cashier the rest of my life. Like, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong. So I got 2 degrees. I am currently the senior web developer for the United States Coast Guard. I own a film company with three movies out, 1 short and 2 full features. I am a New York Times bestselling author with my 6th book, 5th book. I lost count, but my 5th book or 6th book just got released in August. I'm represented by a talent agent out of Los Angeles and a literary agent out of Reno, Nevada. And my most recent book was published by a big company out of Tampa, Florida called Bear Manor Media. So, and I'm going to be hosting a Q&A as Slasher Scotty at Monster Mania with 2 of the top people that were in Halloween 1978. Oh, and my new book, Jamie Lee Curtis wrote the foreword to. So,
oh yes.
So
Awesome.
tell me that I'm not succeeding. And those teachers are on my
Love
Facebook.
it.
And I spam them with tags in every single thing I do.
That's awesome. I was gonna
That's
ask
great.
if you sent them anything, like, hey, look
Yes.
at this best-selling
And then
book
I have
just
people like Joanne Hoppel, who I say in every single interview is the reason why I'm a New York Times bestselling author, because she always believed in me, and she was the first person in line at my very first book signing that bought my very first book. Mrs. Hoppel. And I
That's
love her.
awesome.
Not that many people really cared for her, because she was very tough and very strict. That helped me become a New York Times bestselling author. So you kind of, if she's too strict for you, maybe you're not doing the work that needs to be done, and you're not paying attention, and you like giving her a hard time. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
So
awesome.
Lindsay, what about you? Like, what about bullying? How do you go about that? Any advice? What should be done about that? And then I'm going to ask Lisa about it, from an educator standpoint.
From my experience, my son's only 8 right now, and he's still at that stage where nobody is a bully to him. He just thinks he wants to be everybody's friend, and he's not quite there at picking up on social cues yet, when people are ignoring him or making faces at him. So we're still kind of learning that, but he's starting to learn a little bit more every day about how you treat people. He's so kind, and you don't get to see it often because he's not going out of his way to be extra nice to somebody. But for example, my mom's birthday just passed, and he, without prompting, wrapped up some of his favorite toys and put them in a bag for her, you know, and gave them to her. And he was so sweet about it. And they were his favorite things. So, you know, people don't get to see that all the
Yeah,
time. So I
that melted
do
my heart.
make sure to tell him, like when they are doing something and they're being a great friend, just a lot of positive, strength-based practices to ensure that he's going to continue that and be the person that he's always going to be, whether or not people are going to be that same way, because it is an ugly world, unfortunately. And there, you know, I just want him to stay the person that he is, and just avoid that negativity.
Yeah, we're in a world where bullying exists, and now that we have social media, you don't have bullying as well. Like you do have bullying, but you have cyberbullying now. You add that virtual thing where you're behind a keyboard, so now you could be the biggest, toughest bad guy in the world and really make somebody feel so bad. And that's a big reason why suicide rates are up, because of the bullying, because children are so upset. They're supposed to go to school for education. They don't, a lot of times they don't want to go to school because of that reason. And when you have autism, as Jen mentioned, they have it's a communicative type of disorder. So like it's hard for them to communicate what's going on. So with that happening, it makes it harder. They might not want to go to school or whatever the issue may be, and they're having a hard time to explain why. Because of the bullying, it makes it hard for a child to actually, you know, especially with somebody with autism. And we are in a world where bullying is probably not going to end, at least not in our lifetime. And it's a sad thing to think about, but that's the way the world is. And when you see, you know, adults fighting over whatever it may be, whether it's politics or religion or just, you know, why the sky is blue, like, you know, people are fighting and getting offended over every little thing, that children pick up on this, seeing these adults who are supposed to be, you know, role models because they're adults and they're supposed to be, you know, setting good examples, and they're arguing and fighting and causing all this drama and chaos and bullying and calling people names and all this stuff. And children pick up on that, and children, believe it or not, are smarter than most people give them credit for. And they see that, and then they think that's okay because these adults who should be you know, parental figures are, you know, causing all this chaos and, you know, in the world. And that's why bullying isn't going to end, because it, like, nobody, like us as adults are doing it. And I'm not saying us in general, I'm just saying in general, like adults are causing this stuff in the world. So how are you supposed to expect your children not to bully students in school if you have all this happening? Like, it really is crazy. And that's where my question for Lisa comes in. As an educator, how, like, if somebody's being bullied, whether they have autism or not, do you have any warning signs? How do you go about helping this child, because it's in your work environment? Like, how do you go about that to help them and to find out that they're being bullied? And kind of how do you I guess how do you how can I say it, like how can you, like, I guess provide them the necessary tools or the ways to overcome the bullying, because it really is a big issue.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, I am fortunate to be at an alternative high school in my school district where we focus on social emotional learning. We also, it's just a part of what we do. We teach and talk about empathy. In the sense of understanding one another, even with our differences. We can even disagree, but there's a way to do that too. It's teaching the social emotional understanding how, when they're regulated, when they're not regulated, how can you have a co-regulator? What is your co-regulator? Is it always the person, or is it not? You know, and that isn't always for someone. But I think it's about this idea of teaching beyond some subject. And we make it a priority. Yes, we still teach the subjects and things that, you know, journalism, all the stuff we do. But if a situation comes up that is about the social emotional environment, that's going to preempt a subject in a sense. So it's, at our school, it's the culture. It's already the culture. When you come in, the kids who come to the school, they apply, you know, it's our agreements of what we
Mhm.
accept and expect at our school. We address any issue that there's bullying, but it's also like when you were talking about the tools for overcoming, yes, that's its own thing too, because a lot of kids come to the school because of being bullied. But teaching them the tools of advocating, especially if it is challenging for them, you know, and then like the signs, if it is challenging for a person, you know, that as a teacher, it's this idea of being in tune with the dynamics of your group, with what's going on in the classroom, taking the temperature, I guess, in a sense, often, which requires you to be more prepared. All these things, if you're not scattered and running around, you're able to do these things that are very important.
Yeah.
But signs, you know, of withdrawing beyond introspection, you know, like you can see, you know, a lot of someone who does a certain quality of work and the work is either not getting turned in at all, lack of motivation for doing anything that they normally would be doing, isolating, not coming to school is huge. And they kind of in that habit because of the bullying they've experienced, but we have a very specific tiered system that helps kids with attendance, academics, and behavior, which we hardly have any behaviors, but with academics and attendance, we have it set up so that, you know, before anything gets too far out of control and they have no way to catch up on credits, or they have no way to deal with this, you know, particular issue that's happening for them socially or emotionally, we have it each week that we follow each student in every one of those areas, and it never goes beyond a week of understanding where they are with their attendance, why they were gone, if their academics have slipped, why, and giving them the chance to get the help that they need. So we have our finger on the pulse of students, and we have our own little advisory that we're even like doubly putting the finger on the pulse, so that we have our kids no one can fall through the cracks on anything. We have a beautiful support system of people that in our building that aren't classroom teachers, that are available at any time. And we have like a social work, we have a therapist, we have some CSCT, which is also a therapist, but it's a different funding source, I guess. We have a family resource person, but we use them as another support person. And we have the flagship people who just like staff, when we train them at our school for things, it's everyone, it's not just teachers, this is our Willard way, this is what we do, and everyone matters, from the person they see first when they come in the door, the person they will see at lunch, the person they'll see in the halls. We just set it up to be explicit about the culture we want in our building, that we accept in our building, and that the support is there and so readily available, and so many different people who are a different person that this person will connect with, and this person will connect with this person. And it's just such a variety of ways students can have at least one adult that they connect with enough to be able to share, or at least the adult could know and ask. And I think teaching about even autism and stuff, like bringing that into the classroom, the literature of any exceptionality, and respecting and actually appreciating the diversity that we have. It's like when Lindsay was talking earlier, I was thinking one of the things is like, if a teacher gets the student, they're like, okay, you have this student who will have supports, this, you know, and they give you the diagnosis, the IEP, whatever it is, because you need to make sure you're making accommodations. But it's if a teacher looks at a student and thinks, not in the sense of limitations, but in the sense of like, both Jen and Lindsay were saying, of the strengths, and what's so different that they can contribute. You know, there's so many different talents people have, regardless of whatever neurodiverse, non-neurodiverse, whatever you want to call it. It's like, I don't know, I guess it really stems to the culture, and that you purposefully teach the skills of social, emotional, and personal regulation, and when students understand, okay, I have to be in touch with what I'm feeling and what things trigger me in my environment, so that I can come up with things that help me be successful. If you're teaching that for everyone, it's not a big stretch for them to understand that, hey, that person also will need to regulate at times, and they will also experience dysregulation. And how can I be a co-regulator potentially, and who will, like I was saying earlier, who would be mine? And it's just, everything is set up with a safety net as much as we possibly can. And I think it's just that no student is not connected to someone who's responsible to make sure those needs are being met.
Absolutely, great answer. And like one thing that really caught my eye is what you said, especially earlier in, is that we kind of, just because somebody has a different belief system than you doesn't mean you bully them and tell them why they're wrong in the most horrible way possible. That's why we agree to disagree. We might not have the same beliefs, but we're still human. Like, just because, like, that's one thing that bothers me with politics, is like, you're right, your way is the right way or the wrong, but you look at the other person's point of view. I have different point of views than a lot of my friends and a lot of my family in politics, but we don't let it come between us. We use it as a way to start meaningful conversation and discussions and open the floor, especially with my significant other's side of things, because his family, has different viewpoints than me politically. And it never causes a rift with us, because we learn how to take our differences and beliefs, and we bring it together. We make it, we communicate, and it becomes a big open forum where they hear my side of things, I hear their side of things. And then maybe they make me, I might understand why they believe this way. I'm like, you know what? I never thought of that before. And that's with any topic, not just
Exactly. And
politics.
teaching that kind of thinking too, with conversations of,
Yep.
you can still end up disagreeing at the end, maybe, but you might also have some form of enlightenment that you just never thought of.
Yeah.
And that just because we think differently on certain issues,
Mhm.
or different beliefs in any sense, doesn't mean that that's all of who we are.
Yeah.
So if your political belief is different than mine, yeah, we're not going to agree on several things, but that's not all of who you are.
Right.
If you have ADHD or autism, or whatever it might be for you, that's just one aspect of you. That's not it. Like, there's
Right.
so much.
Yep.
I mean, yes, it's who you are, and it affects your life greatly, but like, that's one dimensional way of looking at someone.
Right. And like, even say with my podcast started as a horror podcast for people I grew up watching, and that's who I wanted to interview. And I expanded it to musicians, to authors, to you guys. Like, it's not just a horror podcast anymore. 90% of my content might be horror based, but I also open it up to different things, because topics like this gets people talking. Topics like this educates people. Topics like this brings enlightenment on, okay, well, my child, maybe they do have autism. Now, how do I go about researching and finding a certified psychologist so I can get my child tested? And if they are tested positive for autism, then now where do I go from there? Like, how do I need to get an IEP if they're at that age? Do I need do I need special medication? What are their triggers? What is in with my child? Because just because your child has social, any type of anxiety or social anxiety or sensory triggers or anything like that, just because your child has that, everybody else might not. So these are things that we kind of got, and that's what this conversation is about, for you all to kind of help, educate the masses that are going to listen to this, because it could make a big difference. And as Lindsay and Jen both said, 1% has autism, the 99% doesn't. So those 99% of those people are probably going to be watching this more than the 1%. And that's where we're going to educate them.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So
Thank
the
you.
last, absolutely, absolutely. And the last question, and Jen, you're gonna make editing so hard now because you moved down to the under corner, so now I gotta put in a different
Oh.
replay and editing. No,
Oh
Sorry.
no, I'm
no.
only kidding. I'm only
Dog
kidding.
needed out. I couldn't put it off. I knew they were being loud. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah, your dog was making a cameo. My cat made a cameo, and when Lisa was talking, I'm like, ow, because she fell.
Oh, I
and
thought
she-
it was
and
hilarious.
Yeah, she fell and she literally hanged on with her claws right on my knees. So now I'm gonna have big scratches in my legs, and then I'm trying to help her up, and she's biting my wrist.
And you're like,
I'm like, I'm not a chew toy. So the last question I got is just gonna go to Jen because it's just a promotional thing. So where can anybody that is watching this, where can they find Autism Virtually? We know it's on Facebook, but where can they go to access this group? And do you have any events that the listening and viewing audience may want to be a part of, or anything in the motions, or how they can find these events when something is created?
Okay, so fun fact, Autism Virtually is only a few months old. So we're just starting out. We're gonna get bigger and bigger and do bigger and bigger things, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So we're excited that we had 2 trainings. We're going from month to month training. That's the goal. So you can find Autism Virtually. It's a private Facebook group, but if you do the search bar and type in Autism Virtually, we should pop up. It will ask you some questions for you to join. Like some of them are silly, like, are you a human? Because like I said, this is for everybody, right?
Yeah. Not bots.
Every human. It's true. They're getting very good though. Bots can pretend to be human pretty well now.
Yeah.
But it's for everybody. So if you have autism, great, please come. If you have a child with autism or a family member, somebody you love with autism, absolutely come over. If you don't, please come over. The trainings we had, like I said, was Autism for Everyone. We have that actually up on our channel so that everybody can watch it and access it. We're hopeful to have our anxiety, depression, and suicide training posted likely in bits. That was a pretty dark one, but it was very important as, 2 out of 3 people with autism in their lifetime have suicidal thoughts. And we have a lot more anxiety disorders. Children have anxiety disorders at like 3 and 4. Autistic children at 10, 11 are attempting suicide. Depression is a big issue. So I'm really hopeful to get that up because that's a really important topic. We're thinking about doing ADHD next time. We're thinking about doing, girls versus boys because it's actually pointing out that there are just as many girls as boys. It's just they look differently. So we're not really picking them up. And we're open to doing lots and lots of other trainings. If anybody comes and says, hey, I'd like to learn about this, we can pull from our admins. We have so many amazing people to pull from to do these trainings.
Yeah, but I know you wanted me to do the ADHD one, which I would be more than happy to do. I know I'm very busy, so if we could pick a day that I'm free, I would be more than happy to help with that. I lived with ADHD since I was 6, 7, 8 years old. So, yeah. Yeah,
there are so many kids who have autism and ADHD together.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest co-occurring 2 diagnoses together with autism.
And this is a fun fact. A lot of people might not know this about me, but I have Tourette's and ADHD, and both of them combined can look like autism or an Asperger's syndrome. And I was misdiagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. And then my mom went to get a second opinion, and they said I didn't have Asperger's. So she went to get a third opinion to see what kind of like the tiebreaker, I guess, would be. And they said I don't have Asperger's, I have Tourette's. And that when we found an ADHD, and it looked a lot like Asperger's syndrome. So I was misdiagnosed. But I mean, as I mentioned, I don't want him to be embarrassed, but I have a significant other who, has autism, and he's now he's going to be getting a degree in psychology, and he just started a paid internship as an autism, a therapist for autistic children. So, the fact that, we have that, people like that are willing, that want to learn. He didn't know what he wanted to do for a long time, but he decided that, he wanted to do psychology, and he loves the classes. He loves working in that field. And, and there's a lot of psychologists out there, and a lot of people are trained or are getting trained or getting educated and learning it, and it's just who is the best doctor for you. And just because a doctor misdiagnoses a child doesn't mean they're a bad doctor, because things can't, like, doctors even make mistakes and they miss the diagnoses, they miss, they see things that look very similar but might not be that. And I mean, doctors are human, but things are tricky,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah. So I thank all three of you for joining me tonight, Jennifer, Lindsay, Lisa. It's really been enlightening. I mean, like I told Jen before we started recording, I always set my interviews to 30 minutes max, and usually it goes under. This one, I think we're hitting an hour. So
Yeah, pretty
we
close.
doubled it. So we
Yeah.
doubled it. So yeah, I try to stay away from long interviews because a lot of people don't want to listen to that. But this interview was very enlightening, and I think it went really well, and I think a lot of people are going to be very educated, and you're gonna, and if you don't have a child with autism, if you don't have autism, still come and join Autism Virtually, because you, without anybody in your family or whatever that doesn't have autism, might be able to still make a difference with with the knowledge, because you might come across somebody in a group, not even Autism Virtually, just in a group in general, that might be asking a question about their autistic child. Maybe it's a mental health group or whatever, and you might have, from a training from Autism Virtually, the knowledge and the education, not the education, but the experience from that training, that you can help them and at least point them in the right direction. And maybe this interview kind of, I would hope, help somebody with that, kind of come across that.
And one more thing to say too, like, if you, even if you don't have somebody that you love or close to you, with autism, autism is being diagnosed in the United States, 1 in 44, I believe, right, ladies? So of 100 children being born. So, okay, maybe right now you don't have somebody you love with autism in your life, but there is a good chance, statistically speaking, that the person 15 years now from you may have a grandchild, may have a child with autism, may have a family member, a close family member with that. So it's always good to be aware and to educate yourself.
Absolutely. And if you're watching this and you don't have a child that has autism, ouch. Stupid math. God. Right in the same spot you scratched me earlier. Sit down. But yeah, so like, if you don't have a child or anybody with autism, as Jen said, like, you might find that partner that you want to have a child with, and that child is born and they might have autism, and if they do, then this will, you might already have a head start on from this interview alone. And if you join Autism Virtually, you can have that head start on what to do if you come across that bridge, because guarantee you, my mom wasn't prepared for me to be misdiagnosed with Asperger's but still have ADHD and Tourette's. She was in a depression. She wouldn't leave her bed for months, and it wasn't because she had a child that was different, or a child that had Tourette's or whatever, because she wasn't embarrassed by it. She was concerned because she's like, okay, now my child's gonna get bullied. Now what do I do? And she was right. I did get bullied a lot. And look where I am now. My bully's asking me for my autograph. So
there.
but yeah, no, but seriously, like, that's that's the way it is. Like, bullying is a big part of it. We spoke on that, and people that don't have any of this, they might say, well, that's not gonna relate to me, but it might relate to you at some point in your life, whether or not you think it will, because it really can. It's always a possibility. And people like educators like Lisa and professionals like Jen and Lindsay, you guys, having this interview and with Autism Virtually, it all will help people, even if it doesn't affect them now, it might down the road. And that's where people like you and groups like this come into play and really give people the awareness, the skills, the tools, and the education that they might need. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Well, I thank you guys for joining me tonight. Yep. This was very fun. And I will let you know once I have it uploaded then. All right.
Have a thank you, Scotty, for this important
so much
interview and letting us get this out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye, Jen. Bye, Lindsay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.